All right, YouTube. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast talking Auburn football. It's Auburn Football Sports Talk here on a beautiful Thursday afternoon as Auburn gets ready to take on the Florida Gators, a very historic rivalry in the SEC. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. My thoughts shift to Gus Malzahn. Another threshold for Gus as he takes his team down to the swamp as the number 7 team in the country with so many opportunities ahead. He's back on the spot. How prepared will this Auburn team be taking on a Florida Gators team who is 5-0 but have not faced at least the perceptual level of competition that, folks feel like they, would garnish the 5-0 record. Having to come back from behind to beat Kentucky, thrashing Tennessee, beating Towson 38-0. Also, really having a very, very interesting struggle with Miami early in the year. But we can't really take too much stock into that. That's a rivalry game. Miami and Florida, go back many years, and when these two teams have a chance to meet one another, they're going to pull out all the stops. But the question is, where is the Florida Gators team at this point? They're getting some guys back. Zuniga is coming back. He's definitely a force. I was looking at video footage on the Miami and Florida game when he had the chance to play. He's very impactful defensive end. He also plays interior. So definitely going to be a huge challenge for the Auburn offensive line in that game. Defense for the Florida Gators shows some level of vulnerability to where I think Auburn could have some success with the run-pass option and getting the ball on the perimeter, which Miami was successful at. But at the same time, talking about this from an intangible level, Gus Malzahn, this is the game that solidifies where Auburn is as a football team on one of the biggest stages that so far this year. College game day is coming into town to Gainesville, Florida. And you just got to represent in a game like this. This is a game that Auburn absolutely has to win if they want to continue to establish themselves as a mainstay in not only the SEC West, which is highly competitive. You got Alabama and LSU, but also in college football in general. This is not a game going into a bye week that Auburn needs to surrender and have to play catch up. This is not the type of situation where Auburn needs to go into a game that's very manageable. That's a game that I believe Auburn should win. If you look at the trenches, both sides of the football field, I think Auburn has the edge on both sides. But what does Auburn do? How do they approach this game? Of course, there is some perceptual concern with the secondary. Auburn has a tendency, especially on third downs, to sell out and give teams an opportunity to score not to score, but to convert on long third downs because Auburn likes to sell out with the blitz and go to man-to-man coverage. I'm wondering if Kevin Steele kind of goes conservative on this thing and maybe implement a little bit more zone, a little bit more linebacker spying, running backs, quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Like giving themselves a chance to not give up big plays early. I do feel like with Trask back there in the as the quarterback, that if you put pressure on him, he's not going to leave the pocket because he can't. He's not mobile enough to leave the pocket, so he's totally dependent on his passing ability. So if you take the passing ability away from Trask, then you give yourself an opportunity to put pressure on him to read the defense, and you start to, get into situations where you have coverage sacks and you possibly have what Auburn is really not particularly great at is generating interceptions. I have not seen an interception like a straight up interception from Auburn in a long time, mainly because of the way they play defense. They sell out with the man, they put pressure on the quarterback, and they kind of gamble, so to speak. And a lot of times, if you look at the statistics, a lot of times they win, but will Auburn kind of go a little bit more conservative in a game like this against Florida to try, especially on the road, to try to get some 3-and-outs, to try to quiet this crowd? Because you don't want to give up any big plays early and get this energy going with the homecoming factor. And with Florida, starting to really feel like, they're one of the top 10 teams in the country. So one thing I am impressed with as coming from the Auburn Tigers is the way that Gus Malzahn is really, really getting comfortable with his play calling, utilizing multiple levels of personnel, and really, really setting this offense up to be very successful down the stretch. Getting off to fast starts have been a key to their play in the SEC. You talk about against Texas A&M jumping up 2 scores, against Mississippi State 42-9 at halftime. I think they want to attempt to keep this trend going. One thing Auburn has to be careful of is the fact that Florida has one of the most opportunistic defenses right now in the country. 24 sacks. They've done a great job of generating turnovers. And they have C.J. Henderson back and Zuniga back, who provide that extra spark to the Florida defense. Offensively, have some of the most talented receivers in the country. I think this is going to be a huge challenge for the secondary for the Auburn Tigers, and they're going to really have to avoid some of the busted coverages that they've had against teams like Tulane and Kent State, also giving up a little bit more passing yards in the Texas A&M game than, one would like to expect from a team as experienced as Auburn with Javaris Davis and Noah Igbenogany. Christian Tutt, definitely a great cover guy in the nickel package. And then you got Daniel Thomas and Jeremiah Denson, who are sure tacklers and great coverage guys. So going to be a very interesting matchup for the Auburn Tigers. But I do think when I look at the defense for Auburn, facing a very seasoned offensive line, but not a very experienced offensive line. And just being fair, I don't think, Florida's offensive line has seen anything close to what they're going to see as far as pressure from arguably one of the better defensive lines in the country. And I think that's going to be a factor in this particular football game. Also, Auburn's ability to spread the ball around with guys like Sean Shivers, Boobie Whitlow, Matthew Hill, Sal Cannella, Seth Williams, and then, a guy that we really haven't talked about in a few weeks, Will Hastings. And then the guy that really, really causes a lot of imbalance for defenses, Anthony Schwartz. As I see this game, it's prediction time, guys. The Auburn Tigers going into the swamp, they have a lot to prove. They have a lot of guys that have come back for a special season, and that special season is developing so far. I don't think the Florida Gators will be able to match the physicality of the Auburn Tigers. I'm not saying that because I'm an Auburn guy. I'm saying that because I look at video footage. Prediction time, I'm talking to Auburn 38-24 over the Florida Gators. I think Florida has some success in the passing game, able to move the ball, but I don't think, even as, sound as their defense is, I don't think they're able to keep all the talent coming out of the backfield, coming out of the wide receiver position, and Bo Nix emerging as a threat in the SEC at bay. 38-24 Auburn. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast talking Auburn football. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.